Greetings everyone, peace to you all. Welcome to another episode of Praiseworthy Reviews, where we go through video games to see if they're excellent and commendable. Today, we will be reviewing Ender Lilies, Quietus of the Knights, a dark fantasy Metroidvania by developers Livewire and Aglobe. In Ender Lilies, players play as Lily, an amnesiac priestess who has the power to purify spirits from the blight that affects them. As usual, we will be evaluating the game based on 5 criteria: fun factor, educational value, cultural value, spiritual value, and cost. For context, prior to this review, I have played Hollow Knight, and I 100% completed this game to the credits. So without further ado, let's jump in. As a Metroidvania, the core gameplay mechanics are of course exploration and combat, with just a tad bit of platforming. Combat starts off kind of slow, with the beginning of the game being quite easy. Enemies are lethargic, and Lily herself feels clumsy, with an awkward belly flop dodge mechanic that honestly feels kind of bad to use. Lily feels so slow and awkward that I almost gave up on the game in the first few hours. At the very beginning, you can really only jump, flop, and pray, with Lily slowly gaining more skills in the form of purified spirits who then join her cause. There are a wide range of skills, 26 in all. While they're not all equally viable, there is certainly a multitude of effective spirit skills and combinations that allow for highly customizable builds. Lily can equip 3 spirit skills at a time to each of the main buttons besides jump, with 2 sets of skills making 6 equipped at a time. Combat picks up a little once you get a full loadout of skills, and Lily definitely feels more up to the task of purifying the land once you have more tools available to you. I initially stuck with the same set of skills for most of the game. Personally, I really like summons in Metroidvanias. However, I liked how the devs encouraged experimentation by having skills acquired later already partially leveled. I also found myself using melee, close range, and long range skills, signifying that there's a reasonable balance in skill selection. As you attack enemies, they're not really stunned by hits, which doesn't feel good. However, all enemies have a stun bar in addition to their main health bar, adding additional depth to the combat without being overly complex. There's a reasonable amount of enemy variety across the various areas. The highlight of Metroidvanias are of course the mini-bosses and bosses. Mini-bosses and bosses are important in this game because each is a spirit Lily can purify and recruit. Mini-bosses are fairly straightforward and are usually just bigger and stronger versions of regular enemies, although some of them have a few surprises. The main bosses have interesting attack patterns and movesets, and all of them are pretty memorable because they stick with you as a skill afterwards. Most of the bosses have 3 or 4 attack phases, and I like how there are no surprise health bars or additional health bars. There was only one exception that I can remember, excluding the boss for the true ending. As with most Metroidvanias, exploration is an important aspect of the game. In typical Metroidvania fashion, many areas are initially inaccessible until the player obtains more traversal abilities, which include all the usual suspects of double jumping, wall climbing, grappling hook, and most importantly, dashing. Yes, Lily does eventually get a dash/air dash, which replaces the awkward belly flop from the beginning of the game. Once she has the dash, movement feels a lot better, and she feels a lot less clumsy. Initially, I felt like the level design was kind of lame, but I gradually grew to appreciate the cleverness of many of the hidden areas and switches in later parts of the game, especially the highly vertical areas. Respites, your save points, are reasonably spaced out. I started out not liking the map because it doesn't have any visual indications of what each area looks like, with its rather abstract looking boxes. However, I did like how the map is actually very helpful in letting you know if you have missed any secrets. I'm not normally a completionist, but I do like getting the best ending, and the map's abstract nature does actually help with this a little. The main thing that I wish that the map did better was labeling areas and at least giving you a broad picture of the shape of an area. Progression generally feels pretty good, and it does feel like Lily is constantly getting more powerful, especially since there is no Souls-like punishment for death like in Hollow Knight. Lily gets more powerful by killing enemies and leveling up in a traditional XP sort of way. She can also find and equip new relics, which are the game's accessories or charms, usually boosting different passive abilities. As mentioned earlier, Lily is constantly gaining more spirits, which provides more skills. She can pick up Blight, which is used to enhance and level up those skills. As you explore, Lily can also pick up various items that passively buff her, such as Chains of Sorcery for more relic slots, Priestess Wishes for stronger prayers, and Amulet Fragments for HP bonuses. As mentioned earlier, the game does contain some platforming, but honestly, it is very minor. For most of the game, platforming is unnecessary beyond very basic jumps. For some of the later collectibles, and especially to get the true ending, however, there are certain platforming sequences that need to be accomplished. The game initially started out pretty rough, but it definitely grew on me, and by the time I got the dash, I was definitely enjoying myself immensely. Overall, I'm going to give the game 5 stars for fun factor. Ender Lilies doesn't have a lot of factual knowledge to teach the player, although I will admit that I had to look up the meaning of the words quietus and verboten, so I did learn something there. I also learned about the symbolism of lilies, particularly in the context of death and religion. However, from an educational perspective, I disliked the use of water lilies to represent lilies in some places, which are not true lilies. As far as motor skills are concerned, I didn't really find the game challenging at the beginning. Some of the later bosses did require a number of attempts to successfully overcome. There's not a lot else you can learn, but I think the difficulty of the game itself was fine. In my personal opinion, it's not quite as hard as Hollow Knight, especially if you have a good set of skills equipped. Overall, I'm going to give the game 3 stars for educational value. The art style of Ender Lilies, Quietus of the Knights is definitely more anime-inspired or anime-adjacent than something like Hollow Knight. I think it's going to be a little divisive. Some will love it, some will hate it. For me personally, the anime style doesn't seem quite as approachable as in the Persona series or the Danganronpa series. The animations and effects are serviceable, but some of them do feel less polished than they should for whatever the reason. I'm not sure why I feel that way, since there are obviously some nice touches, but overall the visuals were satisfactory but did not wow me. The music, on the other hand, is superb. During one of the vocal tracks, my wife stopped what she was doing to let me know that she really liked the music. Japanese indie group Millie does an excellent job of creating the tragic mood of the game. It's disappointing that there's no voice acting in the game, but given its indie roots, that's not particularly surprising. The story has a lot of parallels with Hollow Knight. It's a fallen kingdom infested with some crazed monsters that needs to be saved by our main character, who may or may not be one of many such heroes. Ender Lilies takes it up a notch by making the characters human and increasing the religious aspects of the setting. The narrative plot is quite good, but like everything else in the game, it starts a little slow. The characterization is, in my opinion, the weakest aspect of the narrative. More NPCs and development beyond just memories would have definitely helped. The game tries to insert some dialogue at key points, but it feels half-hearted instead of fleshed out. The true ending did feel like a cathartic ending, although some of the emotion it tries to evoke feels a little unearned in my opinion. According to VG Insights, the game has sold an estimated 1 million copies, and a sequel, Ender Magnolia, was released in January of 2025. Overall, I'm going to assign Ender Lilies 4 stars for its cultural value. Ender Lilies has little in the way of concerning negative content. There's nothing sexual, no drugs or alcohol, and no vulgar language. There's some blood and violence, but even that doesn't feel excessive or graphic. However, there isn't a lot of positive content either. ESRB rates Quietus of the Knights as T for teen, which seems about right. From a Christian perspective, the themes of the game and the religious symbolism are generally positive. For more analysis on the themes, check out my biblical themes video for this game. Overall, I'm going to give the game 4 stars for spiritual value. Ender Lilies generally does a reasonable job of respecting the player's time and money. There are respite points before every major boss, and you can fast travel to any other respite point, as well as teleport back to your last respite point from any location. For the time poor, the main story could probably be completed in about 15 hours for ending A, but that's probably not going to be satisfying for most who play the game. For the time rich, the game took me about 23 hours to complete 100% of the achievements, collecting all the collectibles and getting the true ending. Even after that, there is a boss rush mode, but since this mode doesn't feel very fleshed out, I doubt this will be fun for most people. Ender Lilies Quietus of the Knights retails for $24.99 USD and can regularly be found for about 60% off, which is excellent value. Overall, based on the content value, narrative accessibility, and asking price, I'm going to give the game 5 stars for cost. Ender Lilies Quietus of the Knights is a Metroidvania that excels in many ways that purists may dislike, but are positive in my opinion. I like the fast travel system compared to Hollow Knight's. I like that the game is challenging but not mind-bogglingly difficult in the way that Hollow Knight is, with more flexibility in approaches and less demand for perfection. And I like the solemn themes of the narrative, although I think the story could have been better developed and executed. Even though the early game felt quite clunky, Ender Lilies is a late bloomer and does eventually grow into a solid Metroidvania experience. Based on the criteria discussed in the video, I subjectively assign Ender Lilies Quietus of the Knights the rating of Genre Gem. That's all I have for you in this video. Bless you guys. Thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it. If this video blessed you in some way, please consider watching some of my other videos, subscribing, or sharing with me some of your thoughts in the comments below.